you would need to know some of these things before taking on this exercise yourself. So we're going to look at some of the common mixer terminology in Pro Tools, configuring inserts and send return paths to add signal processing, and that'll be for primarily time-based effects, but we'll be doing some processing using gain-based effects as well. Recording and editing basic automation, and adding plugins to tracks for internal effects, processing, and sound shaping. Okay, so some of that might take the form of what we will call parallel compression. More on that in a minute. All right, so the Pro Tools mix window here, you can see that I've got my my overview here. This is just kind of everything. We're not too concerned with the pan controls here today. What we are concerned with is mostly the insert selectors, the send selectors, and I'm gonna check some of these off as we're moving here. So insert selectors, send selectors, and then routing the audio input and output properly. Again, not so much of the pan, and even not that much of the volume fader. We'll ride the faders once or twice here. All right, so moving on, and we're gonna basically just talk about how to get to that mix window. So there's a great shortcut for it. It's Command plus equals if you're on a Mac, or Control plus equals if you're Windows. That's going to swap you between those two windows. In fact, I can show you what that looks like right now. So I go to Window, and then I'm going to go to Mix, and that takes me over to the mixing board or mixing area, and then I go to Edit. Okay, and again, the shortcut toggles. I'd say that's a shortcut that I use almost more than any other shortcut in Pro Tools. It's very useful. If you've got two displays, then you probably don't need to use it. So configuring the mix window, we talked about some of these controls already, but specifically for what we're doing in this exercise, the IO selectors, input-output selectors, and the insert and send selectors are going to be of importance to us. All right, so starting with the input and output selectors. So we're talking about generally this area down here. Okay, so each one of these tracks has an input path. This one's not set right now, and then an output path right there as well. And we'll be using these there's a little fader icon on each one of these, and what that does is it opens up an individual fader for a track. We'll be doing that, and we'll be doing that also from the edit display. All right, so moving on. We're talking about the plugin inserts, and this is where we're going to be placing an emulation, a software-based emulation of something that would have originated in the hardware domain. It could be a compressor plugin, it might be a delay plugin. We'll talk more about the different types in a moment. But we also, in order to use these plugins in either parallel processing, or just in order to not have to instantiate a plugin per track, we're going to have to set up these sends, configuring sends and returns, and we're going to be, in most cases, of an audio track that we'll set up one of these sends on, and we'll return by way of an auxiliary input track. And let me show you what that would look like. Actually, it would be a matter of this. So you can see here that there's a send that's been placed right here. Okay, and you can see that that corresponds, just if nothing else by name, with that effect. And you can see that this input path selector takes on the name of that send. So we're sort of creating a routing here by doing this. Okay, so more on that in a minute. The inserts are the audio plugins themselves. Now, these are real-time plugins as opposed to destructive plugins, which we'll talk about here and we'll use in our exercise. But here we've got an insert. So this is a patch point. All of these, you see 5 of them up here. Pro Tools allows up to 10. That would be on a Pro Tools test, by the way. But we're just seeing 5 right now. We get 5 of those slots or patch points for these processors, and the processing does take place in order. So in this case, we've got this expand going through this EQ, and so the order of processing is important. We're getting that expand followed by the processing of that EQ. All right, and then this is an older plugin that's been around for a long time, the Sans Amp. Sometimes you'll see that on like a bass track, as is the case here. Sends and returns, well, we just kind of covered that, right? So what's happening here is we are sending some of the original signal from the guitar track here. Okay, you can see that the guitar has its own fader. It's set kind of low right now. It's below unity or the 0 point, which would be right around there. We're sending part of that signal to our auxiliary track over here. And we can tell that that's an auxiliary track. You know, the default color coding has them green, which this one is, and it's labeled verb. We could tell it by that. We could tell it by this icon, that downward facing arrow. We can also guess that that might be one because it's solo safe. You can see the solo button there is grayed out, and that's a really common practice for an auxiliary track when it's being used in this type of a situation. So we're basically sending some of the dry, unaffected signal from the guitar, and then it's being processed in the form of a return from this auxiliary track, the verb auxiliary track. All right, so in order to automate, now this is something else now. So in order to automate, we have to summon or use what's called the automation window. And the shortcut for this is Command 4 on Mac or Control 4, but you need to have a keypad. So if you're on a laptop or something like that, the shortcut might not work for you unless you're using some sort of extended keypad. So allowing you to automate these parameters, and I've got only italicized because sometimes you want to filter what parameters you're going to automate because you know you're done with the volume, but you know, say you know that you've got some more panning that you need to take care of. So each one of these controls right here, for example, or here, will turn gray when they are not enabled for automation. So you can see you've got 7 of these. You can disable the automation entirely from the suspend button. All right, moving on. But you need to keep that in the back of your mind. Otherwise, you're going to try to ride the fader and nothing's going to get written in the form of automation. So we've got our types of automation. We're going to start with, I guess, maybe the most basic, along with read, which would be write. This is going to write any of those parameters that you just saw enabled from that automation window. So it's important after sort of taking your initial pass, as we would say in write mode, to switch to read mode if you want to hear the results of the automation. If you've got any touch-up work to do, we'll use this. We'll use the touch mode. But again, for sort of a first baseline pass, write works really well, and it works, you know, it works well if you've got automation that is simply a matter of on or off without a bunch of steps in between. So that's one of our automation modes. Again, the important part here would be this automation mode selector right there. That's where we pull up the automation mode. All right, so playing back the automation requires that we are in what's called read mode. It shows up in green, and this is the default mode, and it plays back the recorded automation that you have there. You need to make sure you're not set to off if you want to hear any of the automation. Okay, any automation will be ignored. So how do we view the automation playlist? Again, playlist is sort of a Pro Tools term, and it's used for, you know, whatever appears in this area. For example, I think I'm making lines now. This area right here. Okay, so that's a playlist. And you know, sometimes you want to see the automation, or sorry, sometimes you want to see the waveform or the audio clip there, but sometimes you want to see the automation, for example. So you would switch from right here, that's our track view selector, you would switch then to volume, and then you're going to see just the volume, and you'll see it overlaid atop sort of a grayed out waveform, but you'll only be able to make changes to the volume at that point. All right, so moving on. Editing breakpoint automation. So you can see we have these little nodules or nodes within automation here. And if you're using a DAW such as Logic, they're actually referred to as nodes. On Pro Tools, we call these breakpoints. And it's very simple. You can see you can option click, alt click in order to delete one of these. You can double click using your grabber tool, which of course is represented by this hand, in order to create a new breakpoint. So we'll be editing some of those in a little bit. The plugins that we've talked about for audio processing. So we've got 2 flavors, if you will. We've got the real-time version, which is more commonly used. And that's non-destructive, which means you're not actually changing the audio or the waveform in any way. You're not writing to the audio file. And then we have these non-real-time counterparts, which are referred to as AudioSuite plugins in Pro Tools. We'll be doing a reverse operation here, where you are destructively, I know it sounds scary, but you're writing to the audio to create a new audio file. All right, a lot of these plugins come in both flavors. It's just a matter of your application. Okay, so what plugins come with Pro Tools? Well, we've got the AIR Creative Collection, standing for Advanced Instrument Research. And without starting around Pro Tools 8 or so, maybe 9, we've got a lot more plugin processors. So we've got more time-based processors and gain-based processors. Here's just some examples of each of those types. And there's subtle differences between each of these time-based processors. Gain-based processors are compressors, equalizers, gates. We'll be working with both compressors and gates in a few minutes here. A compressor is going to sort of squash the audio together, make everything have less of a dynamic range. We're talking about a gate. It's an interesting one. Basically, it says, hey, if you're not getting to this volume level, you're not going to pass through at all. So it's commonly used in cleaning up drum tracks. A gate would be. Equalizers, we talked a little bit about that. And dynamics, again, we've talked a little bit about each one of these and their function. A de-esser would commonly be used for dealing with vocalists. Maybe they have too much sibilants or S's in their recording. All right, so we've got a nice task list here today. These are the things that we can plan on doing in Pro Tools for the next half hour or so. All right, I'm still here with you guys. All right, so let's have a listen to this ad. We've got just a voiceover and basically a narrator, band tracks, and then these beach elements. Let's listen to it.
Summer's here and it's time for some fun in the sun. But don't hit the dunes unprepared. Spicoli Surf Shop has the coolest beach gear, so you don't get baked by the sun. Our gnarly accessories include swimming apparel, sunblock, boogie boards, flip-flops, and oversized beach towels with sand-free technology. So keep the sand at the beach and the waves within reach. Stop by Spicoli Surf Shop today.
Yeah, some pretty loud sibilants. So we might actually use a de-esser on that narrator. But before we get into any processing, I'm looking to see how many basic food groups I have here in this session. So I've got the narrator, and then you can see below that, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 band or instrumental tracks, followed by 2 of these sort of beach sound effects tracks. And so what I want to do is I want to be able to distinguish between these more easily. So I'm going to call it my color palette. I'll leave the VO alone because there's only one of that, but let's go ahead and select all of these contiguous tracks. So that's going to be just a matter of selecting the drums, holding shift on either Mac or PC and selecting that last of those, the beat wave AU. All right, so let's now go ahead and pull up our color palette. And I'm really not that interested in changing the coloring of the clips in each playlist. I just want to change the color of the tracks themselves. So let's go with that, and we'll give the band, they're playing something that's making me feel red somehow. So we will make them red. And then we've got these bottom 2 items, the beach effects and the fire effect. So with those, we'll pull up our color palette again. And let's make them, what's a beachy color? Like maybe this kind of orangish. Okay, that reminds me of the sand. So master will leave alone. It's just one of those. So now we've got these color coded. It's going to be easier for us to navigate the session. And let's go ahead and talk about a little bit of effects processing here. So we talked about the delay. You'll remember the shortcut to get us over to the mix window is on a Mac, Command equals, on PC, Control equals. And so what we're going to do here is I'm just going to solo because I want you to hear what this sounds like, the vocal. It's unfortunate that this was recorded the way it was. You'll hear that there's some natural reverb or ambience on the voice. We can't get rid of that without going through major hoops. It's just going to have to stay there for now. But here's what the voiceover sounds like on its own.
Summer's here and it's time for some fun in the sun. But don't hit the dunes unprepared. Spicoli Surf Shop has the coolest beach gear, so you don't get baked by the sun.
So there's a natural reverb. Again, can't get rid of that. But what we can do is we can add a delay effect, and that's going to sort of call attention to certain words. So we talked about these inserts as being sort of patch points or virtual patch points. So I'm going to click on our first bullet there, okay, out of this bank of 5. This is first insert selector, and I'm going to come down to delay and select the Advanced Instrument Research dynamic delay. Delay is a funny thing. If you set the feedback too high, you're basically telling it you're going to send this many copies back into yourself. So if you set the feedback up to something like 100, the delay is going to continue over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. The mix sort of has to do generally with how much of the effect is taking place. And 50% or something like that might be common if I were using a non-shared effect, which is what I'm doing here. Okay, eventually we'll share this, but right now you can see I've placed the plugin directly on that voiceover track. So, I'll roll with this 50% mix. I'm certainly going to want to roll the feedback to a lower level here. I'm going to select from the librarian menu preset. There's some great ones in here. We're going to use this 2:3. That'll work nicely for us. And 91% is going to be a lot. So I'm going to dial this back to 40%. Let's listen to what that sounds like.
Summer's here and it's time for some fun in the sun. But don't hit the dunes unprepared. Spicoli Surf Shop has...
I'm starting to think like going to a monster truck show or something like that. But that's that is the effect that this has. So again, we want to create this as a shared effect. So I'm actually going to get rid of this entirely from the inserts up there at the top. We're going to be using this also on the fire effects. It's going to make the fire sound like it's popping out a little bit better for us. So I'm going to select those. I'm using Command to select non-contiguously. You'd use Control on PC. And if I hold down Control and double click, there we go. You can see that now I've got an auxiliary track created for me. It's just a little bit less of a hassle than having to come up to track and new. Of course you could use a shortcut, but this is kind of a new thing in Pro Tools. They gave us these shortcuts to create these tracks. So I'm going to double click on that. I'm going to rename it delay, and this is going to be a shared effect. So I'm going to place that same delay plugin on the insert of this new auxiliary track. So we come to the delay, aerodynamic delay. And then I'm going to use that same preset. We just had that 2:3. Again, I'm going to bring the mix all the way up to 100%. And when I'm doing a shared effect, the reason I can get away with that is that I'm only going to be sending a portion of the audio, of the dry audio, from each of these two tracks that are feeding into the shared effect. So I'm going to solo safe, and I talked about this earlier. I'm going to solo safe by command clicking on Mac, control click on PC, that auxiliary track. And that's basically saying, if I've got the VO and or the fire soloed, we'll always be able to hear that delay effect, which 9 times out of 10 is what we'll want. Let's bring the feedback. We'll take that down to 40. We could even type that in if we wanted to. So that'll be a little more reasonable, given that I'm going to now send some of the audio from the VO. So I'm going to use an open stereo bus here, 3.4, we'll say. And I'm going to bring this to Unity. I'm going to option click on the fader, and so that will be now sending to that delay. We got one more thing to do before this happens though, which is that we need to set a corresponding input on the delay here. Okay, so you can see we're sending via bus 3.4, okay, to this delay. So we need to correspond here, bus 3.4. I set the input path selector on the delay. So now when we listen to the voiceover, we should hear the delay.
Summer's here and it's time for some fun in the sun. But don't hit the dunes unprepared.
All right. So as I mentioned, we're also gonna set this on the fire effect. And what I could do here is really I could option click, alt option click on this send here, this bus 3.4. And I can drag it over to the fire effects. And actually the benefit of that is gain will already be up to Unity on that track. Now we've got these elements.
Summer's here and it's time for some fun in the sun. But don't hit the dunes and get baked by the sun. Our gnarly accessories include swimming and
yeah, so we hadn't listened to the fire on its own, but this just sort of makes it pop. Without the effect, it sounds like this. It dies pretty fast, but with the effect, Yeah, it's really kind of something a little more fearsome, right? So we talked about volume automation, and that's what we're going to do next is we're going to automate parts of the voiceover here. So we're going to specifically tell it when the processor, when we want that delay and when we don't. And if you're following along here in the book, then you can actually see here that the words that we want to emphasize are, or phrases are baked by the sun, sand-free technology, and the final word, today. So those are the places we want to have our delay. So what would be helpful, since I'm here in the edit area, would be for me to be able to access these faders. So I'm going to go to I/O, and I made those visible by way of this menu, which is called the window view selector. And I'm going to bring up that single fader, just like that, from the output window. And what we're going to be doing here is we want control over our send. So I'm actually going to come down where it says main out here, and instead I want this send. And we're just going to be automating the mute, okay? That is whether the delay is going to be heard or not. So I'm going to generally have it muted, and for those magic moments, I'm going to unmute. So we need to make sure before we do that, that we go to the automation window I talked about earlier, and make sure that this send mute is enabled, which it is because it's red, okay? Now later we're gonna automate some volume, so I might as well go ahead and check that now, just so I don't forget later on. All right, so let's go ahead and try that. We need to get ourselves here into a different automation mode, don't we? We need to change from read to write. Okay, and off the bat, we start with a muted delay. Okay, so let's just solo this so we can hear what's going on. And here we go.
Summer's here and it's time for some fun in the sun. But don't hit the dunes unprepared.
Baked by the
Spicoli
sun.
Surf Shop has the coolest beach gear so you don't get baked by the sun. Our gnarly accessories include
Sand-free
swimming apparel,
technology.
sunblock, boogie boards, flip-flops, and oversized beach towels with sand-free technology. So keep the sand at the beach and the waves within
And a
reach.
big finish.
Stop by Spicoli Surf Shop today.
Okay, there we go. So we've got a voiceover that's got those elements. And if we wanted to change any of that, we can actually go to the track view selector and we can select the mute automation for that particular send. So, you know, if we didn't want quite so much at the end, you know, I might have kicked that in a little bit early, then we can switch to our grabber tool up here. And I'm going to go into slip mode, just so I'm not quite as confined. And, you know, that way now at the end, it's not quite as over the top.
Spicoli Surf Shop today.
Okay, it's a good time for us to remember to put the automation back into read for that voiceover. We need to create some groups, and this might be new for a few of you, but we're going to group together for our mix elements of the band. I'm going to select each of these band tracks here, and from the groups menu pull down or group list pop up, I'm going to select new group. And then here, I'm just going to use, I like to use big letters because they're easier to read on workstations. So I'm going to call this band, and we've got these different types. We'll leave it as default, mix edit. We only care about the mix aspect, but you can see here under the globals, which we're following, that this is going to allow us to simultaneously group the volume or mute state for each of these tracks, and also importantly, the automation mode, okay? So that I don't need to keep entering an automation mode for each one of those tracks. So we've created that group, and actually what we're gonna do here is just from the track view selector here, I wanna show the volume. I can tell you right now it's too loud for everything that's going on, but let's listen anyway.
Summer's here and it's time for some fun in the sun. But don't hit the dunes and
Yeah, it needs to come down like 70%. So I'm going to click again on this little individual fader icon, and I'm going to bring, look at this, since we've got everything grouped together, I'm going to bring this fader down for the drums track, and look what happens to the other three tracks for the band. They all come down accordingly. So I didn't even have to write that information. We're just in a read state right now. So let's see how we sound now.
Summer's here and it's time for some fun in the sun.
So maybe we need a
But
little more
don't
than
hit
that.
the dunes unprepared. Spicoli Surf Shop has the coolest beach gear so you don't get baked by the sun.
That'll work pretty well for us because we're going to be ducking the band out in a few minutes. So, you know, we want to have enough of it there. All right, there's this cool element musically called the beat wave AU, and it's sort of the synth pulsating effect. Let me show you what that sounds like. Yeah, so I want to create some little volume swells there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to suspend or clutch these band groups, and you'll see that we go gray down here. So that means that these 4 items are no longer grouped together for now. So I'm going to enter touch mode or touch automation. I'm just going to touch up this automation here. Again, let's get my fader. This would be a good time to double check the automation window just to make sure that we've got volume enabled here, which it is, okay? So let's go ahead and do this. You know, I could copy and paste this, but you'll see that the pattern does change later on, so it's just as fast for us to do this here. Give myself a little more lead time. There we go.
Summer's here and it's time for some fun in the sun. But don't hit the dunes unprepared. Spicoli's Surf Shop has the coolest beach gear, so you don't get baked by the sun. Our gnarly accessories include swimming apparel, sunblock, boogie boards, flip-flops, and oversized beach towels with sand-free technology. So keep the sand at the beach and the waves within reach. Stop by Spicoli's Surf Shop today.
All right. Okay, so you can see now we've got all those breakpoints there. My goodness. You know, at this point, if we wanted to adjust all of the band together, the easiest way I can think of to do that would be to use what's called a VCA track. And this is something relatively new in Pro Tools non-Ultimate now. So VCA is a reference to something called a voltage controlled amplifier. Now, we don't have voltage controlled amplifiers within Pro Tools, but it operates the same way that a VCA would operate on a traditional console, like an analog console. So to create one of these, I'll use my shortcut Shift Command on a Mac, Shift Control on PC N. That's new track. I can use the shortcut keys again, Command or Control, and the right and left arrow keys for stereo format, and then down arrow for the VCA master. I'm not going to rename it. We're just going to make one of these. And hit Create. And if I bring up the single fader here for the VCA, you'll see here there's a lot of information that's not there that is on the other faders, such as the metering. So what I need to do here is I need to assign the band group to this VCA. So I'm going to go right now, and I'm going to say from no group, I'm going to select band. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create just a little bit of automation to show you guys that this functions as a trim, and it's going to take into consideration the automation that already exists in that beat wave track. So it's going to take into consideration the fader moves that I make on the VCA for all the tracks, but it's also going to preserve all of that information in the beat wave relative to the automation that I'm drawing on here. All right, so we're going to throw this into write mode, and here we go.
Summer's here and it's time for some fun in the sun. But don't hit the dunes unprepared. Spicoli's Surf Shop has the coolest beach gear, so you don't get baked by the sun.
I'm just kind of alternating.
Our gnarly accessories include swimming apparel, sunblock.
All right, let's stop there. I want you to look carefully at each of those volume playlists. You can see that these little blue lines that have appeared. So we've got these beach elements, as I'd mentioned earlier, and I thought it might be kind of fun to play around with these a little bit. So I think we need more seagulls here. It's like kind of like the cowbell, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to duplicate that track. I'm just right-clicking and I'm going to hit duplicate, and I'm going to just say OK to all there. And what we're going to do is we're going to make that selection there on the beach effects track, and we're going to process this using the AudioSuite other category reverse effect. So we're just going to have a lot more seagulls now, because see, right now we have these seagulls. And I'm thinking it would sound kind of nice if we had a bigger flock of seagulls. So I'm going to hit reverse and process that. And let's hear what we've got now. All right, yeah, so that kind of takes us to the beach. While we're on that subject, I want to show you clip-based automation. So you see we've got these little fader icons, and it says 0 dB for each of these clips. So if I wanted to increase the volume on these tracks without having to go into automation and all that business, I can just click on one of these little faders, and I can just bring up the level like so. Okay, now I think those seagulls are a little too loud, so I'm going to bring them down. For technical reasons, it works a little bit differently than straight automation, which would be a discussion for another day. But the fire track here, same thing. Okay, I'm just using gain-based automation. If I'd wanted to, I could actually view a clip gain based line. Okay, you can see now I've got these lines, and I could grab my smart tool and do something like that, all right, to make that adjustment. So that is clip-based gain. Now we need to get into ducking. So we're going to do some signal routing here. So we've got our band elements, and I want the band basically to come back in volume every time the voiceover comes back in. So there's a few things we need to do in order to make that happen. Now we could just ride the faders. That would be the easy way out, would be to record automation, but this is a technique that's used all the time, and especially in live broadcasts. You know, you can't really ride faders on somebody as they're giving a speech. You don't know when somebody's going to drive by in a truck and shout, etc. So that's why we're doing this here. And I'm going to come back here and select these band tracks, and I'm going to shift option click right here on one of these output path selectors, and you can see the bottom option here is new track. So this is going to allow me to do this routing that I was talking about at the same time as creating the auxiliaries. So I'm going to call this band submix and say okay, and you can see what's got happening here now. Let me just move this over here a little bit. You can see what's happened is all that routing is taken care of for us. So these output path selectors are no longer just read analog 1, 2, but they're feeding into the band submix, which is super cool. This saves us a lot of steps. So I'm going to insert a compressor on the band submix now. So I go to my multi-channel plugins, and I go to dynamics, and I go to I'm going to use one of the standard Pro Tools, so compressor limiter. This is basically just going to say to the band, you need to be quiet. Since we want it to be quiet only when the voiceover is doing his thing, we're going to create a send from the voiceover. And in this case, I'm going to use a mono bus. Generally, this technique is done using mono busing. So bus 5, I'm going to basically say, I need to remember that I need to turn up my fader here. We'll bring that to unity. And I'm going to put it in a pre-fader state so that we can hear how the band is being influenced by the voiceover without actually hearing the voiceover. So we've got a couple more things we need to do to make this happen. We need to key to that bus. Okay, this is called sidechaining. This is the effect you'll hear in a lot of EDM music where you've got a synth that's pulsating with a kick drum. Well, no, those faders weren't being ridden. That's an automated effect using the same technique that we're going to do right here. It's otherwise known as ducking. So I'm going to just go ahead and select bus 5 on my little skeleton key, and then also sidechain in here. And I'm going to use a preset because it takes a while to dial these in. So I created a preset called Sunbaked Ducking 1, and you can see we've got this really high ratio, kind of mid threshold. I've got another preset, but let's see how each one of these works.
The beach and the waves within reach. Stop by Spicoli's surf shop today.
All right, let's try it from the top.
Summer's here and it's time for some fun in the sun. But don't hit the dunes unprepared. Spicoli's surf shop has the coolest beach gear so you don't get baked by the sun. Our gnarly accessories.
So there's little spots where the band kind of creeps up. This would be a lot easier to hear if I were to chop up. I'm going to do it. I'm going to chop up the voiceover just a little bit here. So we got these pauses that we can make. So we're going to make like William Shatner surfer dude, basically. The voiceover is up here, and I'm just going to create these spots where I see pauses in the speech. I'm just using the B key. I'm going to blow some of these out. I want to make sure, by the way, that this automation follows edit is enabled, because we have that cool delay-based automation. Remember, we muted the send. We want to maintain that in relation to all of these clips. So it's important that this not be orange, which means off. It needs to be blue to do that. So let's go ahead. And again, I'm in slip mode. I don't want to be in shuffle mode for something like this, because all of these parts of the waveform will be moving all over the place. And so let's just drag these like this, and now we'll get a much better sense of how the band is backing off, coming back.
Summer's here and it's time for some fun in the sun. But don't hit the dunes unprepared. Our gnarly accessories include swimming apparel, sunblock,
I'll try different
boogie boards,
presets.
flip-flops,
Although I'm
and
pretty happy with
oversized
this one.
beach towels with sand-free technology. Stop by Spicoli's surf shop today.
So, that either one of those presets seem to work pretty well for me. Let's do some parallel processing. So we've got this cool guitar part, guys shredding, create um, two auxiliaries for this guitar. So Shift Command or Shift Control N, they're going to be stereo because the guitar is stereo format. And I guess we'll just duplicate this one. Okay. All right. So guitar 1, command right arrow, guitar 2. Okay. All right. So I need to feed guitars 1 and 2 from this guitar track. So this is parallel processing. So I'm going to take the output now, changing the signal flow. I'm going to go to use bus 7/8. And let's rename this while we're at it. So I'll just do it from here. Bus 7/8 is now going to be guitars, we'll say. And so from the input path selectors here, I'm going to select both those tracks. There's a shortcut, Shift Option clicking on the input path selector. So we've got due to all basically. So those are both going to be guitar tracks now. Those need to feed into the band submix. Otherwise, we're not going to get the ducking that we just set up. So again, Shift, Alt, and then bus, and then band submix. There we go. So you hear the effect of this. I'm going to bring the fader all the way down on guitar 2, and I'm going to insert the pitch shift plugin on this second guitar part. Is the plugin. Okay, so real-time processing, non-destructive, and I'm going to set to 5 semitones because guitars sound really cool in perfect fourths no matter what you do. Let's hear what that's going to sound like. I'm going to solo the guitar, solo safe these tracks. All right. Let's get rid of the ducking for now. All right, so yeah, we didn't have to play anything in. We didn't write to the audio. This is all real-time parallel processing. Now, the only problem here is that we've got a little bit of a delay. If you listen carefully, that guitar that's in fourth speaks just a little bit late. So we have to go to options and enable what's called delay compensation. And that's because we're processing this audio through a plugin, and then we're also not processing it. So to even them out, we need to use this options delay compensation. Check it out. Oh yeah, that's much better. All right, so that's parallel processing for you. Let's re-enable our ducking before I forget. Last thing we're gonna have time for here is to use a signal generator plugin to sort of fatten up what the drums are doing. I've made this a little bit easy. It's more introductory, but I just want you to see what this sounds like. This is a really commonly used method for drum replacement or just sort of beefing up kick drum, for like an R&B style track. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create an auxiliary track here, and it's gonna be stereo for the drum track, and I'm going to call this one SigGen. And I'm going to bring the fader down right off the bat because these can get really loud. So I'm going to bring the fader down on that auxiliary, and I'm going to now insert or instantiate a multi-mono plugin. We don't get this as a multi-channel plugin, so this is one of those rare cases where I have to go in, and I'm going to other signal generator. So we've got a continuous tone. It's based on a sine wave, and I can take the frequency, and we'll see how low our speakers can go basically here. All right, so we're getting a nice 85 hertz. So we've got this continuous tone, which is kind of annoying. So again, we need to use sidechaining or keying in order to sort of break up this monotonous tone. So I need to use a gate. Okay, I'm going to place a gate directly after this signal generator. Remember that these inserts are sort of in order, they're progressive that way. So multi-channel plugin, again, this is a dynamics type plugin, not a time-based one. And we're going to select the expander gate, and I've got a preset that's going to allow the signal generator to take place in time with the drums. I've also set up some high frequency and low frequency filters so that it's the kick drum that is passing along the necessary information. All right, we need to set up a bus. So let's go ahead and bus from 9. And we're going to pick up, of course, bus 9. Make sure that this skeleton key is enabled. And I'm going to solo the drums, solo safe the signal generator, and our band sub mix is solo safe. Let's listen. Get rid of ducking. This is an important step. I need to make sure that this fader on bus 9 is set up a little higher. Yeah, so here it is with the signal generator and without the signal generator. Again, that's all real-time processing. I haven't played that in on a MIDI instrument. It's just there, and you can hear it's there because we've got this humming going on while I'm talking. So we're going to set up a little bit of mute automation as we did earlier, and I can just draw that in on the signal generator. So signal generator, I do not want to hear you right now. So I'm going to go to mute and then use my pencil icon, basically shut it down until that first entrance. You'll hear that it's now muted, okay? If I come back over here, there it is again, okay? We'd probably want to do that at the very end as well. So let's just approximate right there. All right, let's listen.
Summer's here and it's time for some fun in the sun.
Need our ducking back.
But don't hit the dunes unprepared.
We also need the
Our gnarly accessories include swimming apparel, sunblock, boogie boards, flip-flops, and oversized beach towels with sand-free technology. Stop by Spicoli's Surf Shop today.
All right, we set up a loop that ends a little bit early. Now we need to bounce all this audio. What I'm going to do here is use a very rough limiting plugin on my master so that everything just sounds a little bit punchier, a little bit more level. I'm going to go to Dynamics here, and I'm going to use this limiter that comes with Pro Tools called Maxim. I use it a lot, especially for mixes that are temporary. And I'm just going to use any one of these presets will do fine. I want to bring the threshold down to about minus 8.5 so that everything's nice and punchy. I don't need to use the noise shaping. I want to make sure the ceiling is no higher than minus 1 dB. That way I won't have any clipping. Okay, and you'll see the gain reduction, by the way, in the metering on that master fader. All right, let's check this out.
Summer's here and it's time for some fun in the sun.
Let's give our
But don't hit the dunes unprepared. Shop today!
All right, just at the tail end, I remember the de-esser we talked about. Let's, just apply a male de-esser here, and so you can hear what effect that has.
Summer's here and it's time for some fun in the sun. But don't hit the dunes unprepared.
Without de-esser.
Our gnarly accessories include swimming apparel.
With it.
Our gnarly accessories include swimming.
This is kind of a gentle, you can see the reduction right there on the metering. All right, so let's go ahead and set up our bounce. So what we're going to do is, I like to use memory locators for this. So I'm going to go ahead and find that very first drum hit using tab to transient, which is up here. Tab to that hit. I'm going to create a new memory location. This is where it's really nice to have a keypad so that you don't have to do all this, but I'm going to go to the drop down and I'm going to say new memory location. We don't have to name it. That's going to be location 3. And then here at the very end, I want to allow my time-based effects to die out. So let's say right there is good. Okay. So I've marked my out point there. And now from here, I'm just going to hold shift. I'm going to click on location 3, shift, click on location 4. I've now defined a region that I want to bounce. And I want to save that region because I'm going to create 2 different mixes of this project, one with voiceover and one without. So let's go ahead now and make that happen by going to memory locations. And I'm going to create a new memory location, but I'm going to make a selection-based one. I'm going to call it bounce. And the reason I like to do this is in case I ever lose that selection, check this out. I can just go right back and I can grab that bounce. So this is super useful if you're printing out a lot of drafts. All right, so let's go ahead and create our bounce. Easy. It's going to be Option Command B or Option Control B for Windows users. And we'll call this one Spicoli VO. And then we're just going to make an MP3 out of this. And then we want to process this offline. I like to put it on my desktop. That's Command D to get there on a Mac. And hit bounce. Okay. And then if I mute the voiceover, it will not be part of our bounce here. So at this point, it's going to be an option command or option control B, Spicoli no VO. And I'm going to say, okay, well, there we go. And it's in non-real time, so it's really fast. Okay, so now we've got 2 of these on our desktop. We could listen to if we wanted to. So we've got 2 versions here. And that's it.